today is George Hariri from the Shared Practices podcast. George requested we go right. We go
do you
right
guys
to it.
normally do a lot of pre-work for your guests before you get on?
I do.
No,
I do literally no pre-work unless it's somebody like if they've written a book, I try to read the book. But beyond that, no. I always like a spontaneous conversation for me.
So Richard and I both have had different, we've evolved. So we've been doing this I'm coming up on 5 years. And I think that over the years, what we found is we sometimes have our best conversations before we hit record.
Oh, no, me too.
100%.
And 100%. So it's like, I think it's funny that, in the dental influencer world, we have like this elevated sense of importance sometimes where we live in our own echo chamber of just our audience and sort of the people that communicate and listen to our show. And we don't always have time to like go listen to other dental podcasts. And I personally haven't listened to Bulletproof. I mean, and you guys probably haven't listened to us.
Neither have I.
No, yeah. I've listened to your stuff, George. I
really?
will just come out. Yeah, because
I was saying I haven't listened to Bulletproof
content.
Yet.
Craig doesn't even listen to ours. So, but no, I crave good content, and I think it was rare. Honestly, that was the thesis for why I started Bulletproof a long time ago, because I was like, God, I'm not hearing what I think is applicable right now in the dental space. So I guess I'll start a podcast kind of thing. And that was in 2016. So probably around the same time you decided to do it, right?
Yeah. So Richard Lowe founded our podcast in August of 2016. So he went to the first VOD. And then I think right after that, he got the kick to do it himself.
Yeah.
And I hated dental podcasts. And so he was overwhelmed. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'd love the opportunity to make a show that I'd listen to. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like we kind of had the same thesis. And I find that really odd. And one thing that I've heard from our listeners is our show and your show is sort of the two that I hear over and over again as the ones that provide good information for you guys are more practice owners.
Are you just saying that?
No, this is why I reached out with respect.
All right.
I mean, you got to think about how this episode started for me. So one of our interns comes to me and goes, dude, they're talking shit about you on the Bulletproof podcast. And I'm like, what? No. Like, this has happened. There's been a hate episode about me before, and I've never reached out to the person because I never wanted to give them the light of day. And I was like, I've heard the Bulletproof guys are cool. Send me the link. And so then he sends me the link and sends me the timestamp. And I listen to it. And I'm like, I don't think they're talking about me, but maybe they are. And so then I just reached out to Craig and I was like, hey, man, like.
Oh, because it was Craig. Craig was the culprit.
Craig was
so
the
what
one
was
that,
what was
he
it
usually
specific?
is.
So I'm going to, I don't even remember the episode but the comment was, so I'm going to paraphrase as much as I can remember. And it was like, so this one guy, and you all know him. If I were to say his name, you'd all know who he is. He went out and told one of the guys at our mastermind that a practice with $4 million of revenue is better than 4 practices, each with $1 million in revenue. And I say this all the time. So I'm like,
it was like you and a much older podcaster, much older, has more episodes.
Can I give you my guess?
Yeah, go ahead. I thought
it was Paul Goodman.
No.
Okay.
So
I thought it was Paul Goodman.
So when I say much older than me, so it's a guy that's has a lot of episodes out there, and he has a practice that's very small. So, I think it's interesting when someone pontificates about what's best, because dentistry, as I always say, is an individual industry that can suit the individual needs of the doctor and the business owner. So it's always do what's right for you. And one thing that drives Peter and I crazy is when people hijack other people's visions and do what they think that other people are doing to suit their own needs. Even moreover, what really upsets me is when someone who's never done something is recommending to do it. That inauthenticity really bothers me. Like, this is what you need to do. Well, look what you do, bro. You don't do that. So that kind of bothers me because it's just unfair. It wasn't you.
Richard is so polite, and I'm Mr. Direct, authentic, like confrontational. And for me, I'm like, look, if someone's talking shit about me, I'm just going to talk to them and just see
me too. I'm 100%. Yeah. 100%.
And so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to shoot him a line. And so I shot him a message. I was like, I've heard a lot of great things about you. Were you talking about me or not? And if so, I think it'd be a great debate, because the thing is, like, Peter, what I've heard about you is that this is all I know walking into the episode. You have multiple high-end locations in the Atlanta area. And what I've heard about Craig is that he has a family-owned sort of legacy group of practices that's like a mega office. So far, the largest privately owned dental practice I've heard of.
Oh yeah,
So-
there's larger, but yes.
But the ones I've heard of, it's the largest I've heard of in terms of size. I have no idea what your revenue is. My estimation was roughly 10 million.
Yeah.
And
little more, but yeah, there's bigger ones than us though. There's a guy just for point. There's a guy in Ohio, Springfield, Illinois, Ohio. I don't know, but it's massive.
The YouTube
massive, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
is this Dr. Cool? What's his name?
Yeah. He's a cool looking dude.
Yeah, I drove by his practice. It's in Kansas, I thought, in Missouri, right?
No,
yeah.
Springfield.
It is.
He's on a YouTube.
Massive.
Yes,
guy,
that's right. I went on
It's
a
an
golfing
airport.
trip.
It's the
near
Salt
it.
Lake
Yes.
City airport it was meant to be an airport, and they just decided to put some operatories in it.
Yeah, Dr. O. That's your Dr. O.
Yes,
That's
that's
right.
exactly-
That's him.
Yeah,
He makes
so-
my office look like I'm running like a local Chick-fil-A.
Well, I saw him do a YouTube video of a full mouth rehab on CAD cam same day. I mean,
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, so I that's all I've heard. And like, as somebody who's not accomplished either of those things, I think that dentistry is interesting because it's so humbling when you meet people that have accomplished things that are incredibly challenging. And at the same time, we might have different opinions on things, but I felt like the Bulletproof guys are cool, and it could lead to a cool discussion about maybe some differing viewpoints. And I think that my background is math. So I almost have a minor in math, and I entered dentistry with two obsessions, math and basketball. And I have followed the NBA closely since 2010. Like, I can tell you trades, contracts, like I've followed the league, the management side. And what I've seen is analytics change basketball. And what I've done, in my opinion,
Moneyball for basketball, right?
yeah. So I'm writing a book right now called Dental Moneyball,
No,
and it's
but-
our
Oh
philosophy.
my God, Peter says that all the time, by the way. So we would have been reaching out to you when you published that book. I'd been like, George, what the hell, man? You took our stuff.
Yeah. So I'm already like
Good
I'm
for you,
kidding
man.
with you. I'm kidding. It's good, man.
manuscript done into a book called Dental Moneyball, where I talk about our philosophy, which is essentially retrofitting practice management to advanced analytics using basketball as an analogy of where I learned the concepts. And that
So,
was sort of
Give us some more background, George, because I want to hear, because I think you've got a pretty interesting story. Like because you didn't graduate dental school, but not a long time ago, right? Like
18.
how long ago? 18.
So yeah, let me give you let me tell my story. And
Okay.
so I was trying to figure out, I wrote notes on
Got
how
it.
I could concisely tell the
What a
story of
pro,
shared
what a pro.
practices. One thing I've done is I spent a lot of time on clearly communicating to an audience that's never heard of us, right? Because 5 years we change so rapidly, our audience gets a headache by hearing all this shit that we do. And so I went to the U of A and I studied three things. I studied human physiology, I studied molecular and cellular biology, and then I studied pretty much math. And then U of A is a big basketball school. Shout out right now, the number 2 rated team analytically in the country, Arizona Wildcats. So it's happy to have that back. Anyway, I walked into dental school, and Richard, ironically, him and I didn't know each other, but he invited Howard Farran to speak to us. And you're talking
That was the
to
guy I was talking about.
yeah. Oh, okay. There you go.
I can't keep a secret.
I love Howard Farran.
I do too.
From like a high, big picture,
Yeah.
perspective. But
Yeah.
once he starts talking specifics, him and I tend to disagree with a lot of the things he says.
Yeah, that was the man I was speaking of.
So Howard said something that changed my life. I'm 3 weeks in dental school, and he goes, "What do you call a dentist that does one or two things right?" A millionaire. And it talked to the inefficiency in our industry and how this is not restaurants. This is essentially a bunch of dentists who, in order to have a 7-figure practice at 67th percentile, that's not that challenging. And he essentially gave the opposite spin of an optimism perspective on the business of dentistry. And that, combined with a study that I read, talked about how there's an 80-20 rule in medicine and dentistry. And so physicians, 80% of them are specialists, 20% of them are generalists. All legislation, technology, innovations are always going to screw over the 20% minority. Same thing in dentistry. We have 20% specialists that are all fragmented between 7 different things, essentially no voice. And so all innovations, changes, all those things are going to screw over specialists over time. And I saw this as a first-year dental student. I was like, all right, screw doing well in school. So I optimize practicing as little effort in the didactics of basic sciences and all the shit that you go through. And sorry for the language. If you have to bleep me out a bunch, I'll clean it up.
No,
we don't.
no.
Trust me.
No, trust
Okay.
me. The F-bombs fly. We're
Good. Okay.
explicitly
I'm just
rated,
going to be
unfortunately.
authentic. And
Yeah,
so
please do.
I
We wrote
finished,
a book too, by the way. There's probably about 150 F-bombs in this. We got a bad review, Peter, not to hijack your story, George.
Yeah,
We
good.
got a bad review in our book.
Because of your
because of the
vulgarity.
because of the cursing. Anyway, go ahead, George.
So I decided to just totally like dedicate my 4 years of dental school to learning how to get everything right in a dental practice. And I have a very strong right-wrong complex. And it comes from my math, right? For me, I believe
You're a scientist, bro.
Yeah, I'm a scientist.
Yeah.
I believe there's an objective, correct answer to every question.
Yeah,
And
I know that. I can tell that about you right away.
And so
You're scientific as fuck. I get it.
Yeah. And so I approached dental practice ownership that way. So I graduated, I bought a practice, and I struggle bus for a year. Like I was one of those rare dentists that collected over $100,000 a month and lost money. I mean, struggle bus doesn't begin to describe it.
Yeah, 1 year of struggling. That's you got off easy, brother. So keep going.
And then I felt like I figured out projections, and I felt like I had this shift where I started inputting sort of patient analytics, like how many patients we were seeing that month, what was our fluoride percentage, what was our diagnosis per exam, kind of like started putting in some proactive metrics and started spitting out and predicting my production. And that sort of became the beginning of what's turned into what we call analytics-based practice management, which is essentially we looked at every single, we have what we call like a flow chart of all the different operations of a dental practice. And we try to intentionally optimize what process we do for an analytical outcome. And we've spent a couple years innovating this and practicing, and we have 80 clients now, and we sort of test this GP concept. And that's sort of the beginning of our consulting arm. And then I think for me, I went to this group practice management seminar and I heard about sort of the consolidation in our industry. And I have a strong right-wrong complex. And so naturally I got triggered. And I felt like dentistry needs someone to stand up to some of the things that are happening. And
okay, so let me ask you a question, George, because I want to, I'm always about the why. So, you're going through the how and I love that. We're each unique. Yeah. And right off the bat, we are very different. We're very, very different human beings. I love what you're saying, and I think it's great, but I can't, my brain doesn't want to go to efficiency like yours does, which I respect.
You and me are more aligned, George.
Yeah. So you're very much like Peter.
Please stop me. I love this.
No. It's great. And I'm sure that many are just like you, but what I want to ask is a very important question for me to understand about you. What is wrong in dentistry?
Micro, macro. What would you like me to address?
I want you to talk about the macro. What is wrong? What is the greatest problem in dentistry? If you could have a magic wand and fix it, what would it be?
Lack of emphasis on same store performance.
Okay. So do you think that if that was fixed, dentistry would be better?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you believe also? Are you also, I'm sure you're aware of this. Are you aware that dentistry has amongst the highest rate of suicide, drug addiction, and divorce rate?
Correct.
Amongst most. And do you believe that same store performance would fix that stuff?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So the reason why I said what I said about Howard, and I love Howard. I think Howard's great. And it wasn't a disparaging comment if you go back and listen to it. It was interesting because I think in dentistry, there's a lot of people that will tell you exactly what to do.
Oh yeah.
They'll say, this is exactly what you need to do. You need to maximize this. You need to do that. You need to open up 5 locations. You need to be CEO. You need to hire this company. And I think that is what's wrong with dentistry. I think dentistry is beautiful because it allows everybody to express their individual needs. It's like the restaurant business. Certain restaurants actually focus on different
times. You think the big issue is the cut and paste narrative of someone adopting someone else's goals, visions, dreams?
Not necessarily. I think the biggest issue in dentistry is people have had their own beliefs and their missions hijacked. That's my problem. I think there's a lack of fulfillment in dentistry. I don't think it relates to money. Obviously there is money problems. I think many dentists are not fit to own their own businesses. We don't get adequate training. So I agree with that idea. And I think there's a need. But what I experienced, and just might be like my specific purview into dentistry, because the Bulletproof thing probably attracts a specific audience. What I see is people that are actually doing fairly well or on their way to doing well and feeling burnt out, unfulfilled, and disparaged. That's what, if I had my magic wand, I'd like to fix that. Do I believe that improving same store performance is really, really important to fixing that? Absolutely. But I see it as a micro and not a macro.
Can I challenge?
Please, of course.
Yes.
That's why you're here.
So I would argue that, I live by, I talk about basketball nut. There's a video that changed my life, like literally. It's this guy who was at the Kobe Bryant Skills Academy when Steph Curry was in college. And when Steph Curry played at Davidson, he was like a nobody. And he talked about how impressed he was with Steph Curry, the least notable player at that camp, because of his practice habits. And for me, I'll double down on process over result. And so I'm going to show you our process of what we do and how it addresses your concern and how I believe it leads to the result that you want. I think we're both on the same page here. So
we're clearly on the same page in that we want to improve our profession.
No,
and I think there's also
same outcome, he's saying.
Yeah.
Just different methodologies.
But I'm just curious, and I want to whittle down, and we're just at the surface of it. But I think there might be a life cycle thing. I don't know much about the podcast, your audience, but what I see, we see different life cycles. I'm sure you do as well. And the thing that always drives me batty in our own masterminds and stuff like that, because we just got back from a mastermind. We all flew in last night. We're in Seattle. I'm sorry, in Salt Lake City, rather, in Park City. And the thing that I saw most readily was people that just don't know where they want to go and they haven't figured it out. And the greatest thing that I think the worst outcome for somebody is to get everything they ever thought they wanted and still be unfulfilled. And I'm hugely, I'll work my ass off to make sure people understand what they really want. So and getting back kind of full circle, the comment that I heard was a doctor came to see me and like, I want to join Bulletproof, blah, blah, blah. Well, what do you want? I want what you have. Well, why? Because, I heard if you have this many operatories and doing that, you can make that much money passively. And that's what I want to do. Well, why? And I was like, well, just more money. It's going to be amazing. And I said, well, do you like being around a lot of people? How's your leadership? All these other questions. And as we whittled it all down, I came to get the sense, and he did too, actually, like, I don't actually want this at all. And I actually think the way dental school's set up and the way it's so competitive to get in and the internal competition inside of school, that you just start running because everybody is running around you. And you'll get somewhere, but you won't know where you're going. And that's all. I'm just, and listen, does it all need to happen?
Craig,
yes.
Can I be really direct?
Oh, please. Of course.
I think you're making an assumption about us that is inaccurate. We actually address all of your concerns. We don't pigeonhole people into a process. We have what we call avatars.
Okay.
And so what we do is we broke down every practice between $0 in revenue and $5 million in revenue. And we have 30 to 40 KPIs that we use to classify. So we have a solo, a productive solo, a super solo. We have a transition to group. We have 2 different ways to get to a group practice. We have a group practice, a profitable group practice, and a mega group practice. And so all of these are classified by revenue, patient flow, number of hygiene patients per month, number of new patients per month, doctor production per patient, right? And so what we do is we take anybody's practice and we just tell them what they are. And we give them the options of where they can take their practice. It's like a menu. And we do pros and cons, right? This is a lifestyle of this person. This is how many days they work. This is roughly how much they make. And we let them pick whatever the hell they want. And we just have a scientific process to move them through the stages of ownership through an understanding of the process. But sure, we actually don't put a one size fits all. If someone's scheduling system is not a problem, we don't change it. And what analytics do is, what the numbers really do for us is they show us what's broken and most importantly, what's not. Because I don't care if they're answering the phone in a weird way. If they're converting the proper number of new patients and their phone conversion's good enough, I'm not going to touch that and create additional stress. And so we have something that we talk about, which is like disruption and impact. And we always look for high impact, low disruption changes in an office that ultimately get what we're looking for. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough. And so I think that what the science and the analytics do for us is it gives people a simplification. We have this PSS that we live by. Every change that we do has to be profitable, simple, and sustainable. And sustainability, in my opinion, is one of the most important things in dentistry. And it's something that's a staple to our philosophy. And we don't do anything that we don't feel is sustainable. To address your same point about suicide, unhappiness, all of those things. And we're very clear in all of our seminars and all of our talks, money does not make people happy. It amplifies who they are. Yes. And we don't try to make people money. We just try to give them ease so that they can focus on the other parts of their life that are not their dental office. That's really what we're about. And I feel the data gives us the roadmap to really just help people create whatever the hell they want with their office. I don't care what they want.
So let me ask you something, George. So what did you say specifically? Because I was referencing what somebody said that, hey, you want to know what you should do? You should do this. That person came to me with like, I was told by some expert to do this. Obviously, if you thought it was about you, you told some dentist at some point, you should do this. So I will never say that to somebody without understanding. So what did you know about that person or that environment or that situation that compelled you to say that to that person?
I'm going to verbatim something I say in our analytics-based pre-ownership seminar. So we talk about the mega group. So we actually have defined our scope of practice to a solo dentist, to a mega group, and we do not touch multi. I have no passion or interest in helping a dentist with multiple locations.
What's your passion around the multi mega? Let's hear the multi mega. What's your passion around the multi or the mega group, whatever you called it?
Yeah, so we call it a mega group, and our thesis behind this is we feel a dentist is capable of achieving the same level of financial success, a better lifestyle with a higher income as a option for an entrepreneurial dentist in mega group ownership. And what we don't choose to do is we don't choose to help them with something that we don't believe in, right? And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying pros, cons. Multi-practice ownership is a net worth game, not an income game, right? But you can achieve the same net worth, higher income, and I think a smoother like growth trajectory, easier lifestyle in a $3 to $5 million
jump
practice.
On Howard. So when the guy came to me, I'm like, well, why do you want this? Well, Howard. And I said, well, all due respect, Howard's never done it. So, you know, you're talking about Steph Curry and you're talking about Kobe Bryant. Both of them have done it.
Yeah.
Kobe did it. So what I said about Howard was, how would he know he's not lived it? So there's nuances about the mega group that frankly, George, you don't know unless There's something that you could tell me that you've done, but you don't understand the doctor dynamics, the team dynamics. I could tell you that for certain people, it will be harder and less profitable to have a mega group. It's just dependent on the individual person, what they love. I work my ass off, but I love what I do. It's just easier for me. There's people that I know in our mastermind that have 4 and 5 team members and they're super stressed out. And someone along the way told them they need to have a multi-office or mega group, and they're actually running in that direction. We go through our mastermind process and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to do any of this shit. I was actually making more money as a solopreneur when I was doing 3 days a week at clinical and I had only 4 assistants or 4 team members. So that's why I said what I said about Howard. And I guess it is relative to you. So I wasn't talking shit, but it is like, tell me, defend yourself from saying how you know it's going to be more profitable and lead to more fulfillment if you don't know the individual.
So you're using math as a hypothesis, right? Analytics as a hypothesis.
So I science of achievement is there. I get the scientific approach to the achievement, but the fulfillment is that art. And I think the reason, in my opinion, respectfully, I just disagree. And I've seen a lot, you know, I'm not trying to pull the experience card, but, you know, 23 years of clinical practice and meeting, you know, thousands of dentists and like just querying, it's anecdotal, but like, what do I think is causing this lack of fulfillment? People went to a seminar and didn't do an examination on what they really wanted, just said, you know, that's more profitable. I'm going to go do that. And that I just think we're doing a disservice to people without a deeper inquiry into what they want. So I'm taking up a lot of oxygen. Go ahead,
so
George.
I'll say 2 things. So one, I mean, we just met, right? And, you know, we don't know each other's breadth of experience and knowledge. And so to say that one is not qualified to speak on something that the other is, I don't think is accurate.
Well, right? I read your bio that's on your website, and it says that 2018, you took something and went to $1.2 million. So I think that's the scope of which he's talking. And it was
correct.
Okay.
So
we do know.
Well,
Well, you
in
have
2022, I'll have 4 entities collecting over $3 million individually. So that, right, I haven't gotten to 5, but
well, I wouldn't use
between
the
our
number.
consulting experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the number. I think what I was speaking to is like there are unique challenges to the group that you advise people on that you just have not seen.
Correct.
That's all I'm saying. Just like
Yeah.
there's things that you have in your history that I just don't understand. So and there's a lot. I mean, just by the way you came out of the gate, rattling off the statistics and the performance and the metrics, your brain works in a unique way, which I appreciate. I like it. But I would say what I'd say to Howard, I'd say to you, what do you think the biggest challenges are in the mega group that you understand it to be? And how did you base that? On what information did you gather that?
So can I finish sort of my
Please.
initial rebuttal?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So I think that there's the second thing, which is I subscribe to a philosophy, right? I got 4 boys, parenting wise, and I subscribe to a philosophy where it's my job to give them information. And I trust that I don't know what's best for anybody, but they know what's best for themselves. And it's up to them to look at the source of information, the quality of experience, the validity of what they're saying. But I view it's my obligation to be extremely authentic with all the information that I have. And so when I speak on something, it's truly my opinion. It's flawed and it has, it's imperfect, right? But I fully trust the audience that they know what's best for them. And I'm not here to make decisions for anybody. And I think that we both, right? You have a view that's slanted and I have a view that's slanted, and neither of us are dead on. But people should sort of be able to collect all of our views and make whatever decision is appropriate for them.
They don't, though. I think that is the thing that happens, is that all of a sudden, because you're convincing, George, honestly, listen to you talk about math and analytics and from our experience, and you compile it. And then all of a sudden they get romantic about the idea of maybe what you're talking about. And you're assuming that a dentist can audit what you're saying and be like, yeah, that's not for me. Because that doesn't happen. And I think that's Craig's point, is it's so
that's what I hear. I hear people. I'm like, how did you get to this place where you're unfulfilled? And it always traces back to along the way, someone told me this is the most efficient thing and the most profitable thing. And all I would say is, yes, I'm not saying you don't have an opinion. I think you have a wonderful opinion, George. And I'm really happy we're having this conversation, because I think this is what's at the crux of what I'm thinking is a problem in dentistry. And I'm not saying that, your numbers are amazing and God willing, you'll get to 100 million. I think it's fantastic. I'm going to be cheering you from the sidelines, no matter what you do. All I'm saying is, when I've never done something, this is just my own personal bullshit bias, whatever, I'm flawed. Mm-hmm. I tell people, hey, I haven't done it yet. I've never done it. So my opinion as to what could go wrong is these 5 things. I don't know enough about it. I would say, go talk to that person who's actually done it. I always do that. You'll hear me say that all the time. So my bias is that you haven't run or had the working experience of the mega group that you classify doctors want to be in. So when they say, hey, George, what's the biggest challenge? Where are you pulling that information from? What are you saying the biggest challenge is?
Yeah. So this is where we introduce a checkpoint. So I think we're saying the same thing differently, honestly, the more I hear us talk about it. Because what we tell people is, before you go into multi-practice, we advise that they have the experience of a larger single site where they have an associate and an office manager. That's something we build in as an internal checkpoint, so that they know what it's like to hire another dentist. They know what it's like to manage another dentist. They know what it's like to have an office manager and to have an office run when they're not there. And we like for them to practice that in their home court before they go acquire a second practice. Because I think that one thing that commonly happens in multi-practice is somebody is a successcal clinician and they think that their success is replicatable when it's due to their own clinical abilities. Then they go buy a second practice, right?
That's the most common pathway. So they're amazing, iconic producers. They're great in their one environment. So imagine if I had 2 or 3, just for housekeeping issues, if you don't mind, George, what is this? And I keep forgetting, I'm sorry. What's it called? The mega practice or the multi-practice?
Mega group.
Mega group. What is a mega group? What are you defining?
Between $3 to $5 million in collections.
Okay. So it's not about how many doctors are there.
No, usually a mega group will cap out at 4 doctors.
Okay.
That's when our scope of practice ends.
Okay. So up to 4 docs and 5 million.
Yeah.
Got it. Cause I'm thinking, just in my head, I was actually thinking bigger than that, but anyway, it doesn't really matter.
That's where you're like, what basis do you have to be speaking on this? And I'm like, well, I kind of feel like I have so for me, it's,
let me ask you very directly. Have you ever worked in an office that employed 4 doctors and did $5 million?
No.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. But that's where I feel my ability to speak on it ends, because there's always the adjacent experience.
Okay.
Right?
So have you worked in a practice with 3 doctors and $3 million, $4 million?
Yes.
You know,
we have those in. Yeah.
so you worked in them, and how long have you owned
No,
them?
not worked in them. So there's 6 of us in our company, right? I'm not alone here. And so we share experience, right? So some of us have experience that others don't.
So which doctor in this group of doctors that talks to the public has worked in a practice that had 3 doctors and $4 million or more?
So 3 million, Alex Sharp.
Okay. So how many doctors in that practice?
3.
Okay. So all I'm going to say is he's got a unique perspective, a very unique perspective. And I'm not trying to, I'm really not trying to become, and I think this whole dialogue, I really want to say, this is not hard for me. And I hope it's not hard for you. I want you to push back, and because
I'm the kind of the weird guy that enjoys this.
I am enjoying it too, because it's a really necessary conversation. I have mad respect for you, George, and I'm just learning, and at the same time, I want to circle back to say that we're both trying to advance the profession.
Yes.
I know if you want to fix dentistry, I want to fix it too. And we may just be working on different parts of it together.
Yeah. So you addressed something that I never really had a chance to share, right? So shared practices is owned equally by 6 different people.
Okay. I didn't know
Wait,
that.
shared practices like at the podcast, consulting, the whole
Everything.
The whole caboodle. Got it. Okay.
Owned equally by 6 people.
Oh, wow.
And we have a 7th very key person. So her name is Suzanne Rassi, and her experience is, so when we initially kind of hit the Moneyball like epiphany, we're like, all right, we need a grown up with experience. And so we went out and hired Suzanne, who, if you know Mercer Advisors.
Yeah.
So this was Imtiaz Manji.
Yeah.
She was second in line behind him. She was in charge of the 47 in-office consultants, that whole thing. And then she became the head of, or one of the top practice management people at Patterson. And then she quit. And she's our director of coaching.
Did she do investment advisory for Mercer Advisors as well? Because I know they kind of double dip in the consulting and investment advisory
I have
space.
no idea. I think she was just on the consulting side.
Okay.
Is my understanding of it.
Yeah.
But
we should put a pin in that. We should put a pin in that topic too, because I think maybe not us, but there's a lot of people out there that kind of,
So what I'm saying is I think our collective experience is what we advise on. And there's 7 people that all have different backgrounds. So Matt Ford, one of our other partners, he has 4 practices in South Dakota and Minnesota, right? So that's part of our expertise that we advise on. Richard, Richard acquired 5 practices while in the military, right? That's part of our, so we all kind of have like our niches, right?
And George, you guys come together and speak together on the podcast, or there's certain ones that podcast and certain ones that don't?
No, most of us podcast regularly. We try to each get on about twice a month. And then when we have our seminars, we like to all be in the room and we like to have a popcorn style lecture where, like, when someone has something that they have unique experience on, they step up, even if they're not the speaker, and share. Because to your point, you're right. I've never done that. I've never done certain things, but I have partners that I trust fully that have, right? And between all of us, we feel like we share information and we learn from each other's experience. And so that's a lot of our philosophy. And so, Suzanne has spent a lot of time in those larger offices. And so when we all sat down and we said, what's our scope of practice? What are we comfortable advising? Where does our comfort stop? We all collectively decided that the administrative load of a practice doing over $5 million is where we'd rather they go somewhere else. So to get up to 4.5 to 5, we feel like our process is scalable to that level. But then we feel the management challenges of above a $5 million practice is where our expertise stops. And we tell people that at the beginning of our seminar. We say our scope of practice is here. That's where we feel what we say has weight. Past that, we don't really have anything. And I feel like, you've been trying to get my experience, and I'm young. And it's not my experience, it's ours.
Yeah, well, I just didn't know that. I mean, I know the name obviously shared practices, but I didn't recognize it was beyond practices. That. But it does, and again, I understand it better now. So thank you for that. And having said that, I don't know the comment that you made. I can only speak to what was said to this guy, but I just thought it's just interesting because I think that What this guy was saying, and I'm taking it away from you, George, is if you want the most amount of this, this, and this is what you should do. And the person was speaking from a position of authority. And the doctors that we work with in Bulletproof have made some of those mistakes, and they haven't done the visioneering. So that's why in our pathway, the Bulletproof pathway, the very first step is kind of like know thyself. This whole weekend, we brought, 25 doctors to Park City, and we're sitting in a room locked together for 2 days, and we're working on all these different things. And it always comes down to people didn't really spend the amount of time that they needed to figure out what's going to get them to the goalpost, which is happiness, money, happiness, financial freedom, all that stuff. I mean, all the currencies of life. And we're trying to get the people that are far down and course correct, and the newbies that are there, we're trying to get them to distill down what it is they want. There's people in that room that were on a trajectory to, acquire their 12th and 15th office. And now they're going to want to do 50. And there's other people that had 3 that want to go back to 1. So we have the systems and pathway to accomplish that. I just want to make sure that there's a step introduced in your process as well for the benefit of dentistry. And it sounds like there is, where there's a query of like, know thyself. What do you want to really achieve? Like one of the guys in our practice and in our mastermind couldn't get it out. He couldn't work on what it was. He finally, like, his whole physiology changed. Like, goddamn, I know exactly what it is. I want to coach football. It was Bonner. He's like, I want to coach football. I want to, make $1 million a year. I want to work this many days a week. And we reverse engineered a pathway for him to accomplish that. But like I said, achievement without fulfillment is like the worst thing that could ever happen. And as maybe an older guy, I've seen people that said they wanted all this stuff and they got it and they didn't really want it at the end. So I just think if there's a process in there, then I'm totally cool with it. And that's why I kind of said the more aggressive statement to the person that was saying it, because I didn't think.
I'm glad you clarified, George, honestly, because my impression, honestly, unfounded, was that you guys took people kind of dental students and like dentists who were just getting out and help them kind of learn the business of dentistry through data, right? And you're basically saying, yeah, we do that, but we also take you through higher life cycles than that, up to about the mega practice level, at which point we kind of bow out, which is awesome. I mean, I think there's a place. I think there's a place for data, and honestly, given that you don't know Craig and I, like, I'm more of the I'll show you the steps, and here's the 5 ways to do it, and here's the analytics. And Craig is more of, so we're in equal balance. Craig is more of the unique vision and purpose and gratitude, all the things that kind of balance it out. So he and I kind of balance each other with the way we want to run. And he and I converged a long time ago, and we got to kind of similar points in our growth, if you will, or size or scale, doing totally different routes of how to get there.
And I think that, like, I don't think it's a coincidence that, 3 people that all have passion for our industry and have achieved individual success all are saying the same thing in different words, right? Like, we're kind of all saying the same thing, right? And I think it's just like Craig is saying that, it's not a one size fits all, and we're saying the same thing. I think we're just like, what's the
I think we're macro aligned, George.
Yeah,
I
would agree.
I think the way in which we drive there is quite different.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that, like, so Craig's point about multi-practice is our sort of, we build a stair step and we say, just put a pivot point, right? Just get to this point and then make that decision. Because what we see all the time is we see a 4th year dental student says, I want to own 5 practices. Mm-hmm. And we like to put the brakes on that person. And we say, all right, get to this point, then make that decision again. Yeah, because after this point, you're going to realize a lot of the challenges. But what we always see is they jump quickly to that second. And if you ask me, how many practices does the average multi-practice owner own? I say it's between 2 to 3.
Yes,
right?
It is.
And so I don't want them to be in 2 to 3 no man's land where they're spending 1 to 2 clinical days per week in each office, because that's not happiness. That sucks. And
or a lot of times we probably see this, George, that the 2nd and 3rd practice are paid for by the first flagship, which was doing really well. You think you're uniquely qualified because you did 1 well to go to 2 and 3, which I see is the case, not the case, I should say, many, many times.
Yeah. So
you open your first, you do well. You open your second, you do okay. You open your third, it all fails, and you go consult.
So I feel like, I feel like 2 to 4 practices is what I feel is no man's land. It's where you don't have enough EBITDA to have sufficient infrastructure to offload enough of the management to make it worthwhile. That's just my opinion.
How were you at 2 to 4 practices, Pete? Were you feeling like you had a minimum amount of EBITDA to expand, keep going?
I mean, he's not right. I think there is a no man's land. Yeah, it's probably in the three. So that aligns with, yeah, he kind of feels like a quasi, like, all right, what am I doing? 3 or 10 kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I think he's right. I think he's right. Sorry, George, keep going.
No, I mean, I think I'm done. I mean, I don't feel like I have anything that's unsaid. But I think
You want me
that
to just stop recording then?
no, I mean, in terms of this topic, right? I'm good to move on. If you guys want to keep rolling,
I do. I got a lot.
love it.
yeah,
I got a lot.
hit me with what you got.
So let me hear, like, so as you take these people through, let's just say you have someone that wants to become, what have you done with those people that you've helped grow past 5 million? Where do they go from there? What do you do with those? First of all, how many of those have you had that you've actually grown, you had to kick out essentially, or say you're beyond our scope?
Yeah. So, we're brand new, dude. Like,
okay, good.
yeah, like
This is good information. Can we go back to the
Do you
beginning?
still practice?
Yeah.
Or do you practice or not?
no, I clinically stopped August of 2020.
Okay,
August
so
of
you
2020.
graduated in 18 and practiced for
Clinically for 2 years.
Okay, good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you know what's
Or-
funny? I find this to be, George, tell me, I mean, in your experience too, it'd be valuable to hear this. I see there's 2 types of, like there are obviously many pathways to go, but I see 2 kind of dominant trajectories. I see guys out there, guys and gals, who go out of dental school, like really refine their craft. They go into heavy duty, continuing education, and they become really, really profitable as providers in their practice. You know, they go to Coyce and Spear and blah, 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 learn their own implants and all in 4. And it becomes very difficult for them to pivot and go into business because maybe they produce 2 or 3 million with their own hands. So that the replacement value for them is so high. And then other people like categories in another place. And I know a lot of very successful dental entrepreneurs like you, people that even own hundreds of practices. And the commonality that I've seen where they don't actually develop too far clinically. They do 2 or 3 or 4 years, you know, maybe get up to that million and then pivot. Do you see that trend as well? Or do you not see those 2 pathways as being?
I've
curious.
never looked, honestly. But so our audience is very much younger, right? So when you have an audience base, so we actually intentionally do not market because I do not want a cold lead becoming a coaching client. I want someone who has listened to our podcast, adopted our philosophies, is aligned, and then signs up. And so we become an echo chamber, right? That's sort of the downside to that. And what we see time and time and time again is the same 3 or 4 different clients that onboard, and none of them are the first person you described. You know, we don't have someone that for 20 years has been going to all the continuums. And I mean, that person can't stand
5
us.
years, 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the older experienced practitioner has a lot of the same issues with us that you did early, right? Like you've never done this, you're young, you know, like, what do you know type stuff. And we resonate with the dental student that's inspired by, they remember when they were listening to us and we were in school, you know? And so for us, the class of 2020 was our first big graduating class. 18, we had a big class of listeners. 20 is our biggest. So we are helping people into ownership. I would say over 50% of our clients come through our due diligence service and then become owners on their first day of ownership, become clients.
What
And
service is it, George?
we do financial due diligence for like an accounting firm would, you know, to see if a practice is a good buy or not. And that's how we
help people vet a practice for
Correct.
acquisition.
Should you buy this or not? Given your vision, is this a good buy?
Got it. With honestly a heavy analytics.
Yeah. We are naturally
Okay.
the most analytically driven
Yeah.
that I've heard of that does this. Maybe there's someone else out there that I don't know. But so like, we're young in our audience, in our client base, in our company ownership. Like, everything about us is young still. And and I think that's the thing, that we try to sandwich the righteousness with humility, because like, you have to have a fair amount of bravado, balls, and like some level of arrogance to contradict everyone that has come before you that has accomplished things that are much more impressive than what you've accomplished. Like, you have to have a fair amount of that sure of yourself. But at the same time, I've learned speed can kill you. And you need to also have caution and humility and all of those things, because I've made a lot of mistakes by thinking I had the right answer before the test, and life threw something at me that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah,
And
that's important. That's great.
So I think that coming on talking to you guys, right, Craig, you have all of the humility from my standpoint, right? You've accomplished what I haven't. You've accomplished it. You've been doing it for longer. Like, you have everything that dentistry is like a symbolic to me, is that like, I haven't done this yet, you know? But at the same time, I feel we have certain innovations that are new.
Oh, of course.
And
And I
that's
also
where
want
it's
to
like,
take it
how do
away.
you marry those two?
I
That's
also
hard.
want to take it away from you and me too for a second. So when I think about like what I've accomplished, if someone comes to me and says, I want to do exactly what you want to do, I don't necessarily feel that that's good or bad. And I don't really, for me, it was right. For me, it's what makes me happy. But I don't look at my accomplishments as something that people should try to emulate in any fashion. If they wish to do it, I want to help them do it. But I think what it is it's not a personal thing. It's not like, what have you done? And well, look at what I've done. And I'm not that. I would never do that, because if I had my wishes, I wish you could take dentistry to a place that needs to go. I just think that there's just a hole in dentistry, and I think we've beat that issue to it.
So can we go macro for a second, because we got 10 minutes left, and I think that you asked me what the issue is with dentistry, and we started micro, and we've been hammering micro.
No, that was macro, I thought.
I view that as, I think a single private practice owner is a micro issue.
Oh, we were gonna go real micro. Like, why do you think it's 40 KPIs and not 4? That's where I was gonna.
No, that would
Come
not
on,
be
George. I'll battle you.
But I think that if we look at macro, what's happening in our industry right now in terms of a consolidation, in my view, that's what I have the biggest problem with. So Craig, you come from the side of, in your world of dealing directly with private practice owning dentists, the suicide and all those substance abuse issues are most pressing to you. What's most pressing to me is the ethical direction of our industry, with the highway of index fund money coming into dentistry, right?
100%. Yep. Yeah. Short-term investment pressure on
the consolidation more.
Consolidation.
A lack of long-term vision behind short-term decision-making of the companies in dentistry that have the most financial power.
Right. Exactly.
Right. That's where I said same-store growth is same-store performance is what's totally being neglected. And so someone who has 1,000 practices, the emphasis on the operations of each individual one is what's lost, in my view. And so like for me, like, I think I'm not just going to bitch about something. Like, if I have a problem, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I try to do something. And so I was sitting in the seminar and I heard about this, and I heard about what was happening, and I got disgusted. And I realized that without a company of financial size, you have no power. And so what we did was I found the 5 partners, right? I went and found these guys, and I was like, all right, let's just like all put our assets together to have enough EBITDA to go directly to a private healthcare bank that is essentially the same funding source private equity companies use, and take advantage of the infrastructure that's been created, and essentially have a sustainable source of capital to grow a sizable company without any non-dentist involved. And that's what we've done.
So a DDSO, you essentially started, right? Like a dentist-owned DSO.
Yeah, but I think that term dentist-owned DSO is not
hijacked.
Yeah, that's like a marketing play now that doesn't actually mean dentist-owned DSO, because what happens is once you have a private equity bite at the apple,
that's their DSO now.
Right. That's now a private equity backed DSO, and a private equity back has a private equity interest and has a short-term financial objective, and all of a sudden the dentist purity of it gets totally removed. And so the deal that we have with Citibank is a essentially revolving line of credit.
Perfect.
On a EBITDA, so we have a 3.75x leverage ratio. So right now as a company, we're at 2x. So they give us 1.75x times our EBITDA as a line of credit. Every 6 months, it gets reevaluated, and they give us more line of credit based on our trailing TTM up to $150 million of exposure.
To do what? To help, to buy into other people's practice, to help.
No, we will not acquire.
Okay.
I will not acquire.
So to buy what? 50%? Buy what? To do what with that money?
Do you see now how that gives me a blank roadmap, that I don't have anyone telling me what to do with the company? All we have to do is the 6 of us have to hit the targets. So long as we hit the targets, we get more money. And I can use that capital on the private practice side or on the DSO side. And so we have what we call our DSO, we have groups of practices. We have our legacy offices, and those are the practices that we were wet finger dentists. And we will hold on to them and we will cherish their tradition. And we're not going to care about the profits of those practices. That's to take care of our patients and our teams.
Interesting. I like that.
Then we have SP Dental Concepts. And those are all of our new locations. And the idea is we find a void in the dental marketplace that the dental consumer is being neglected in some way. And we find a de novo model that addresses that. And so our first successful concept is dentures and implants. And so we essentially take advantage of a market void with the cost of an all-on-4 to a dental patient and the process of an all-on-4. And we create a group of practices that does essentially economical all-on-4s. And that's our growth on the DSO side. It's something that we ethically can get behind from a dentist. So our three barometers are, is this best for a team member? Is this best for a dentist? And is this best for a patient? And if we feel that it hits all three, then we are okay expanding and using our skill sets
triple win.
to own those practices.
Yeah.
So we give all dentists stock. We sort of, and we're idealistic. And that's okay because we all don't really give a shit about money that much.
Good.
Like we've already kind of had enough to the point where like, I think the study shows $280,000 a year. Past
it went
that,
up recently. Yeah. Yeah.
Past that, there's no increase in your happiness. And so for us, we know long-term will win. We're not so concerned with short-term. And we set up a sustainable capital source to allow us to remain pure, and a voting structure and all of those things. A lot like, like the founding of government, right? There's a lot of the same ideals we used. And so that when you tell me,
and we all know how well that works, by the way. I'm just kidding.
I think that the six of us,
years.
So we have rules though, like the six of us, we have rules, no back channeling, communicate to the six of us. Like we have rules of engagement.
Yeah. And look, you can probably get at least 250 years out of this thing before it self-destructs, right?
I think we got 10 years of like,
we
got 10 years.
Yeah. Like a country, like 220, 230 years.
No. We've told ourselves we have a 10-year commitment to each other. And then we will reevaluate after 10 years. Okay. And we're not really interested in, I think that's what, we have a current deal with Citibank that, I think 150 million, we estimate roughly, our guys have done the projections. We have this consulting firm. And so we got like 10 years to do what we think is best for our industry, to commit to each other, to commit to this project. And then after that, we'll see where life takes us and we'll see what's next. But I think that for us, dentistry gave us all of the mentors that we've met. Dentistry, we have so much passion for dentistry that I think we feel we've been lucky enough. I mean, how did we get innovative? It's because we spent all this time talking to all the industry experts on a podcast, and we feel an obligation to do something responsible with that.
George, is there anything you want to ask us? I feel like we've been kind of getting your narrative and your ideas. Is there anything you want to ask us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, we can go over, I don't mind if you guys don't mind, but I kind of want to hear, I can hear the passion both ways. And it's very clear that we both don't do what we do solely for a monetary reason. And so what I would like to hear from both of you is what gets you up in the morning? What does the future in dentistry look like for both of you, given your ideals, and what matters? That's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah. So what gets me up? I think one of my main purposes, obviously beyond serving my family and, and my team is helping impact other dentists. And I think Craig and I we say that we've made so many mistakes in dentistry, gone through so many gut punches, ups and downs and valleys, that our mission is to kind of help alleviate some of that pain for dentistry. Okay. So that's what gets me up, is the impact. I left this weekend, George, with 25 dentists, and there was probably 4 in the room that made a course correction, an authentic course correction in their life and their career. And to me, if it had been 1, it was worth it. So my purpose is to help other dentists through the micro and macro, since we were bringing that up. Where I say I do not practice clinically any longer. I stopped practicing.
Do you miss it?
I do. I miss certain things about it. Yes, I do. George, I didn't have a very comprehensive career, meaning I only did one thing my entire career. I make fun of myself that I did one extraction and I gave that person a dry socket. So all I did was cosmetic dentistry my entire career, literally from
Wow.
2001 to 2019. That's all I did.
Mad respect for a
So
cosmetic dentist
thank
clinically.
you.
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't do that.
And yeah, and I think after a while, I had to pick because I got to that size, like you were saying, I was still practicing clinically at the size of 3. And I had to kind of, it was a fork in the road. I had a lot of real estate that I was managing at the time. I was like, okay, am I going to practice or am I going to be an entrepreneur? I can't serve both. And so my unique skill set is that I'm very good at business. And Craig can tell you, like, I'm good with numbers. I'm good with vision. I can see things down the way. And so, yes, I miss it. To your question, George, I do miss it probably only 10% of the time, because then I'll remember those stories of someone being like, you see, right,
Yeah.
15 visits, or someone's like, no, right here, you see that? No.
I love everything except for that right there.
Yeah, everything except for that. Yeah.
All 12 units are great, except for this
one. Do we
one.
need to show your befores again, Mrs. Jones?
Yeah.
Do we need to just
got to always show the befores?
So that's where I am right now. And, and I'm really happy with the journey. I think kind of like what you have done with your 5 buddies, friends, business partners, Craig and I are eventually going to do as well, for the same reasons, as we want to see dentistry not consolidated into the hands of shitty people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we are kind of on a mission to do a bulletproof DSO, but we're very micro in what objective we're trying to do, right? Kind of like you guys are. And I think that's where you take action. You said, look, if I think something's wrong, I'm going to take action. And I feel it's incumbent upon us, given our scope and our influence of what we have now, to kind of do that, as opposed to just taking care of ourselves, which we could do very well in our own practices and keep growing, and make the money we want. But I think the real impact and influence and happiness comes at scale in our DSO.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Are you willing to alienate part of your audience to set up that DSO?
100%, which I know I will.
We know we have. Yeah.
I don't really give a shit, because honestly, look, I always say, you're either going to like me or love me, but you got to pick one, right? And because you cannot serve all people and make everyone happy.
Yeah, it's a hyper niche concept too, where there's a solution. There's a buyer for just about every dental practice, except for a certain type.
Wait, hold on, Craig. You're either going to like me or hate me is what I meant to say. Not like
I know, but I like what you said. I was actually going to use that. You're going to really like me or just love me. I like it. You got to take care of yourself, Peter. You got to stroke your own ego. But I think it's important to note that there's going to be a buyer for just about every type of practice, and we just see some unique areas where there's synergy and there's an open channel, for, if you will. And I think, George, the way you described it, you are speaking to an open channel as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm really happy about what you're doing and the philosophy of it. So, dentistry is a very broad industry, and we need a multi-pronged approach to it. So, just like what you're doing, I think, we talk about doing the same thing. But I echo Peter's sentiments as well. Like, I just love, I've gotten my ass kicked so many different ways. I mean, like Peter, 24 years of dentistry, most of it cosmetic. It was hard on trying to be an entrepreneur, 10 doctors, 13,000 square feet and seeing patients 4 days a week. I said, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could just do Invisalign? That seems pretty cool, orthodontist. Yeah. So I transitioned my practice to Invisalign only 4 days a week. And that was really cool for a while. And I think in life, we make these minor course corrections and we go through periods of fulfillment, and then we want to add more on our plate or maybe less. So another course correction came, and I trimmed my practice down to 1 day a week. If you told me that I can't go to my practice anymore, I'd feel like I lost a portion of my identity. I'm very lucky. I serve patients that are, very well known and influential, and I get a lot of my own fulfillment and identity and meaning through this practice. So it's very personal to me, much like your legacy practices are. I'm a 3rd generation dentist, and if you told me I couldn't work here anymore, I would be miserable. So, I'm hoping to speak to a different side of the audience as well, one that doesn't feel shame for being clinical. There's minor course corrections that you make through life, but I'm loving where I am now, and I'm loving the journey. My mission is to just pay it forward, and all the unique things that I've learned, I just want to share it. So I wish there was somebody like me that I could have met like 5 or 10 years ago. That would have helped me a lot. So I want to be the leader I wish I always had.
I love that last statement you said. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've asked for a mentor. Like, it's kind of hard when you're doing something that's unique to have someone who's done that before and kind of can show you the roadmap of where you wish you had known things and could have prevented a lot of annoying days where, you were the nail. Some days you're the hammer, others the nail.
And literally, George, I spent like a decade. I was talking about, like, I spent a full decade chasing things that were not the right thing because I didn't know what, there was nobody out there that was doing this. So I didn't know what challenges I was trying to solve. And I solved for challenges that never wound up happening, and never thought about challenges that I never, that were coming. So it was a difficult path, but it led me to where I am now. And I wouldn't change anything.
So I'm going to tell you,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to tell you about a walk that I went on. So I bought my practice in August, and then in October, it was the first time I made the amount of money I wanted to make. And I went on a walk with my son. He was 18 months at the time. And at the time, my first wife was pregnant with our second. And it was like Arizona in October is one of the most beautiful places. And I was like, I am so unbelievably unhappy. And I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, I've accomplished everything I want. I've reached the top of the ladder that Mr. Achiever in me had that whole list. And I was like, this current process of attempting to seek happiness is not working. And that was when I started seeing a therapist, and I started deconstructing my life and rebuilding it in a different way. And one of the studies I read was the baseline level of happiness. And they study this after people retire. And there's like this euphoric period. And then there's the return of the baseline level of happiness that they had exactly when they were working. And what I think what we're both talking about is everyone has a different set of ingredients that leads to the highest baseline level of happiness for them. And for you, it's clinical. For Peter and I, maybe it's not. And I think that, we should, as influencers, stand up for each dentist's own ingredients that lead to their own baseline level of happiness.
Yeah,
so
100%. And by the way, and just to add to that, because that was beautiful, I don't want to change it, but to add to it as well is Microcourse Corrections.
Yes, love
that.
So,
you hate dentistry. You feel like, I can't do one more periodic exam. Take a day and do one less clinical. Then see how that works. Take another day. But sometimes we make such massive course corrections. Screw the practice. It can't handle it. Call it Acme DSO.
You're talking to me right now, Mr. Macro Pivots.
It's the pendulum I always talk about. Yeah. It's like, you get so wound up and I can't do dentistry more day. I'm just going to sell it all. And then you swing the pendulum all the way to the other side.
And then you wound up equally unhappy, but for a different reason. And I think, it's just an important thing to mention now. When you sell your business, and Peter and I talk about this all the time, you're actually going to take that money and go right back into business, just not your business.
Yeah.
So now it's just never end. Yeah. Or real estate or whatever. So
business, yeah.
I just think that if, I could just say one thing to add on it, that's the Microcourse Correction. That's all. So I am, in full disclosure, 1 day clinical, and it's Invisalign, and I love my assistant. I love my team. And it's more about like just being in this environment and seeing all these great patients that are friends of mine. And that just suits my unique personality. It just works for me. And that's kind of coming full circle to the original comment.
Yeah.
Craig is highly social. If you can pick that up. So he needs the kumbaya.
You guys realize that I walked into this episode knowing nothing about either of you. And
likewise.
I thought obviously I was the most confrontational one here, but I don't think I was. I really enjoyed this though, because it's rare that I get to meet somebody that, or two people, honestly, that are as passionate about different things. The passion is rare, I think, in our industry sometimes.
I agree, George. George, where do you guys, what you say you have like conferences or summits, or you call them?
Yeah.
Where do, I don't know if you call them conferences or summits.
Yeah. So we currently we were testing a concept. So this is insane to me.
Okay.
We saw how much seminars change people's lives, because when you get someone in 2 days, you have them in a room and you can totally change their mindset to the point where they leave 2 days later, they're a completely different person. That's what I've learned in a seminar. Yep. And we have we insist on not providing this information online because we feel it cannot have the same effect on someone else. So we provide our best stuff in a seminar. We try to make it as affordable as possible, and we cannot get people to sign up. It's really shocking.
Well, it's the
COVID has completely changed in-person education.
So Peter, I mean, I don't know what to say to that, but I mean, whatever's going on, pay attention to it, because I tell people all the time, the consumer will tell you if you're valuable or not. So just pay attention to it, pivot, move it, change it. That's what I mean.
So,
not that you asked for advice, but
no, I mean, that's
you-
exactly what we've done is we're walking out of our lease. We have grounds to be released from our lease. So we have a March course, and after our March course, we're walking out of our space, and we're going to try to maybe figure out what is going to work before we sign another lease and get
Wait,
into
you have
another
a
space.
you have a permanent like learning facility for you guys?
Yeah, we have a 100 person lecture hall in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Wow.
That 7,000 square feet. Like we spent a lot of time
Pete's
and
going to
money.
ask you if the lease is assignable. I'm just going to let you know that's coming out of. I'm kidding with you.
Yeah. So
No,
I was kidding.
it was we got it on a sublease,
Yeah.
and our landlords are such assholes that they have now given us grounds to be released.
Perfect.
And so post March, we're getting released from our lease, and we're going to go back, or we're going to attempt to get released from our lease. Right? I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but we feel confident in.
How often were you planning on doing seminars?
Dude, we had one scheduled every month for 2021.
No way. God, exhausting.
Or 2022.
okay.
2022. Sorry. So we had one in December. We had one in January. I have one in 2 weeks. I have another one at the end of March. And well, I'm not going to the one at the end of March. It's an office management course. It's more staff. And then we had 4 or 5 lined up for the fall. And I mean, like, I can't tell you how much harder it is to sell a ticket for a course than it is to sign someone up for a recurring service that is more expensive on a monthly basis than the course.
And the course.
It has totally blown my mind. And that's why we're writing a book now, because we felt a book can have the same life-changing effect on somebody that a course can, but it's $10 and it's more accessible and they can read it from home. And so that was sort of our pivot, is to provide our mindset, initial introduction to our mindset in the course of a book as opposed to a course, because the course did not work. But Richard and I both, but mainly Richard, feels so strongly in person education that we're going to continue to offer them.
Yeah, you should.
And
Really
we're just going to
should.
rent out space for
Smart.
the day. But
the courses are so impactful.
I was willing to do free courses.
Yeah, then no one's going to value that, right?
I know that was the feedback I
It's
got.
also
internally.
how much money can you want to get an iconic location and a great venue and good food, and then it's
we had
free courses.
Is that where it stops though, is the courses, or is there another level where people can engage? Meaning, is that so?
Oh, like all of our, like any of our product. Yeah, we have tons of products and services. We have monthly coaching, we have due diligence,
Okay.
we have masterminds. Yeah, we got all kinds of that. We got all that
Okay.
stuff.
So it basically goes from podcast to then someone coming to your courses, right? And then they enter into something else typically.
Yeah. So
Got
like,
it.
I think the idea is, right, everyone has the inverse pyramid, the funnel down to like the depth of the layers, right? So our introduction is our podcast. Now we're adding a layer on top of that, which is like a book/podcast. And then you have, kind of like different levels of monthly service offerings, depending on different levels of engagement. You've got mastermind only, you've got coaching, you've got mastermind plus coaching, right? And it's like a menu.
Okay.
You can tell how little I enjoy selling to dentists. Yeah. I feel like if you do something well and you inform, then it should sell itself. And I choose not to make the content about sales. So I choose not to discuss our like services and all that stuff. Like they can look us up on our website and get all that information.
Well, I was asking, you asked, I think it's good for people to know, because if they want to, and B, I was asking because I was like, I'd really like to hear these guys in person. I agree.
Yeah, as would I.
In person.
Hey, look, February 25th, 26th. If you guys want to come out, I'll comp it right now, and we could meet in person. And you guys, I would love to do it.
Can we push it back a little further? I have a conflict, but I'd love to do that. We'll do this offline, but I'd love to.
Yeah.
Count us in. Where are they?
The converse of that, George, if you're not doing anything in June, we typically we kind of go the opposite way of you. We only do things once a year. We do our big summits and conferences, and not to pour salt in the wound, but they always sell out because of, and I'm not trying to say because we only do one, but if you do that 12 years,
I understand as well.
They'd sell out.
I know. This is how our first event went. We did the first event that way, and then we pivoted to a monthly format and it tanked.
Yes. So I would extend the same extend the same generosity to you, that if you can make it, then we'd love to have you, because I think we all could use some good I think we all like each other. We all know we're doing good. And I think more exposure for both of our ecosystems is a good thing.
And I love meeting people offline that you hear about online, because you realize that we're all people.
Yes.
And we're, like, no matter how much anyone's has accomplished, or no matter how many followers they have, we all put our shoes on the same way. We're all just humans. And I think it removes that barrier, and it just kind of, we're just in person and we can just talk and relate a little bit more effectively sometimes.
Yeah, well said. It's actually our common frailties and challenges that bring us closer together and help each other out the most. I agree with that. That's awesome.
Totally.
And I mean, I think this summit that we have coming up in June in Nashville, we have a track system. So, there's a lot of people coming for different reasons, office management and hygiene and stuff like that. But I think it'd be really cool to see what we do, and learn a little bit more about you. And there's possibly, ways that we could work together. There's a unique perspective that you're bringing that we just don't even, it's just kind of.
Well, and I think that there's like the Venn diagram, right? Like, we both help the same private practice owning dentists, but in terms of a DSO, it seems like we're both approaching the same problem in two different ways. And we both, all three of us, offer something that the other one doesn't have. And
that's power.
I mean, what's the point of not sharing and talking and getting to know each other? I don't see the value in that at all.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you reached out. I'm glad.
Aren't you happy that you talked shit about Howard Farran on a podcast? This worked out really well.
That
led to this.
Yeah, I know. It's great. So next one's going to be Howard now. He's like, hey man, heard you.
Yeah. No, he won't be hearing it. He's dude's retired.
Is he really?
And he's
semi-retired. Yeah.
He's too busy to do to anything else other than his own voice.
Have you been in his podcast, George?
Have I been on?
Yeah.
No.
You'll be a guest listener. I went on it and I just never got a word in. I was literally just like,
I have no desire to be talked to for an hour and have my name on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got talked to for like 20 minutes of this one. So I appreciate your.
I liked it though, because it was confrontation. I enjoy that.
It was all good, man. I appreciate what you're doing. There's a lot of really good content in this, and I'm happy that our audiences get to learn from it. But once again, I think you're doing great things for dentistry. I'm happy our paths intersected, and I can't wait to meet you in person coming up soon.
Yeah, and then it seems like you guys have a team, and we have a podcast team. So let's have the teams connect, and then we can simulcast this, so that our audiences can get to know each other at the same time. I think.
Do you have a hygiene specific one?
We have a hygiene specific coaching offering, but we don't have a hygiene specific podcast. I was talking about team in terms of podcast production.
He's talking about posting the pod, Craig.
The
thing that happens.
Our production team.
Got to keep it very slow for me, George.
Craig is just the talent here, and we do.
Peter, do you do a lot of the back end stuff?
Do I? He's just the talent. He's my Tony Robbins of dentistry.
No, please don't say that. That's not.
I bring him up as.
I'm like the Tony Roma of dentistry.
No, I'm Tony.
Hey, Tony Roma.
No, that's what Peter looks like. Everybody says Peter looks like Tony Roma.
I won't get it to Tony Roma. But anyway, let's just move on.
Exactly.
George, I really appreciate it, man.
This was great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it was awesome. And we'll connect offline about the posting. And man, I really enjoy this one for real.
Yeah, same.
For sure.
Same.
Thank you.
Real pleasure.
Thank you. Take care, guys.